Before we begin, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Mr. Chibs, and I review stuff that gets me fired up. Lately, it's all been hi-fi related, and I have a lot to unpack here. Everything we talk about today is my own experience and not influenced or sponsored in any way.
Tubatastics Flying Circus.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird intro. I considered going full Monty, but you don't want to see that, right? Just to connect the dots, I've always been a huge Monty Python fan. If you've been living in a hole or a confused millennial, look them up. A British comedy group that got their start working for the BBC. You know who else got their start working for the BBC? Chord Electronics. That's right, their founder and chief engineer John Franks worked with the BBC to co-develop Chord's first amplifier. It was called the AM820, and this became a BBC standard. From there, Chord became popular doing what they do and made amps for such studios as Abbey Road and Skywalker Sound. In 1994, Franks met a guy called Rob Watts, who specialized in the digital end of things. They began collaborating, and 28 years later, they're still working together, churning out really odd-looking tech, and Chord Electronics is almost commonplace in audiophilia. So today, my friends, we are going to be taking a look at the Chord Mojo 2. It's been out for a while now, and I've been using mine for a number of months, so I thought I'd share a quick review and some of my thoughts. Now, if this turns out to be long and luscious, I'll leave chapter markers below that you could skip through, either way. Before we get into that, I'm just wondering, how do you guys ingest your music? Let me know in the comments below. For me, it's been predominantly at home, and if you've seen some of my previous videos, it's been on loudspeakers using Amazon's high-res streaming service. Now that I have everything working nicely, that's how I play. It didn't start out that way though. I used to live in a much smaller space that limited how much noise I can make. And before that, a much larger house, but that house had paper-thin walls, so loudspeakers weren't really a consideration. So yeah, I was strictly a headphone guy because of this. Now, I do still listen to the headphone rig in my office, but more often than not these days, headphones are just more likely to be used while I'm on the go. Here is where I thought the Mojo 2 would come in really handy. What I found out was Mojo isn't just a portable device, but more of a jack of all trades. Getting a little bit ahead of myself here, so more on that later. I just wanted to see what all this Chord hype was about. This is the first thing from Chord that I've ever bought, so it's been more of an introduction based on curiosity than anything else. People go crazy over this company. The original Mojo actually pioneered the whole portable amp DAC category, and on top of that, Neil Young uses one, so I had to see what all this hype was about. Let's do a quick unbox.
So, in the box you get a quick start guide, a QR code to download the manual, as well as drivers for Windows-based computers, a thank you letter, and legal/safety instructions. The Mojo 2 itself, of course, and a small micro USB charging cable. So, after that unbox, I went and connected my iPhone to the Mojo with a FiO USB-C to Lightning data cable and started my listening. Things sounded great, right up until they didn't. An ear-searing blast of white noise happened. This hurt my ears. So I power cycled the Mojo and the iPhone as well, but it eventually happened again. Getting frustrated here, I opened up a drawer and got more cables. None of them worked. They all made it so my iPhone would just play out of its external speaker and not the Mojo. It's important that the cable is capable of transferring data, and the ones I have besides the FiO are just for charging only. So I connected the FiO cable once again. You have to understand, it's not happening all the time. It's intermittent. So I'm at a point where I'm playing Russian roulette with my eardrums as well as the drivers in my headphones. No bueno. Sometimes it happens when I move the cable around, and sometimes it just happens on its own, whether the phone's on airplane mode or not. To further troubleshoot, I grab my iPad Pro and a straight USB-C cable. Music. I move things around, I take it off of airplane mode, and I get no white noise whatsoever. It's the bloody cable. I just picked this one up because it was reported to work with the Mojo. I don't know, maybe I got a bad one. Grabbed my Apple camera to Lightning adapter and a USB A to C cable, and everything just works perfectly with my iPhone here as well. At this point, I'm thinking at least I don't have a defective Mojo. PSA. The Mojo does work great with a smartphone, but if you have an iPhone, you need to be very careful which cable you buy. I do not recommend that Fio cable that I started out with. Just stay the hell away. I found another cable by a company called DD Hifi, and I was able to pick this up locally. A bit desperate, I bought 2 different lengths, and it was a good thing I did. The shorter length gave me the exact same problem as the Fio. The longer 50 centimeter length works perfectly. This is the only cable I can confidently recommend. I'll throw a link below the like button. It's my hope that this video saves you guys some of the frustration that I went through here. Now that I had all that figured out, I could finally start to enjoy this thing and learn its features. So here is the Chord Mojo 2. One thing I'd like to point out is if you've been looking at this online and looking at photos and whatnot, it is much smaller than you realize. Here are my hands, and they just gobble this thing up. So nicely small and portable, built of anodized aluminum and just really nicely milled and really nicely made. It is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, and people buy cases for it, but I think this thing is just so well made, I don't feel the need to have a case on it. So I'm going to start by showing you the ports on the side. All right, so starting from left to right, this is coax. Next to it is one of the feet on the bottom, and this is a USB-C port. Now it's important to note that it is only for data. Right next to it is a micro USB port that is also for data, so you could use either type of cable should you want. Next to that is another micro USB port, and this is just for charging. This is the only way to get charge into your Mojo 2. Right below it, if you see that lit up, that's the battery indicator. This will change color depending on whether it's charging and depending how much charge you have left. Next to that is a full-size optical port. All right, so turning over to the opposite side, you can see that it's got 2 separate 3.5 millimeter headphone jacks. Now, these work simultaneously, so you could share your music. Unfortunately, you cannot control volumes independently. If you have the same type of headphones, you should be fine. On the bottom, we've got 3 nice rubberized feet, and then this, as I said before, this is the USB-C port, and they made it sort of a foot. It's not rubberized, but it's got a bit of a plastic texture to it. Okay, so let me show you the buttons. I'm going to turn it around because the indicators are on this side. So we've got the menu button, volume down, volume up, and of course the power button is here. So on that note, let's power it on. Watch the little light show that it gives you. It does take a while to boot up. And once it boots up, you hear a click. Boom. We are powered on and ready to go. Let's quickly go over the menus. If you click the menu button once, you've got 2 options. You've got brightness control by pressing this. So brightness control low, brightness high, and then you've got crossfeed by pressing the volume up button. So a little bit of crossfeed, a little more, and the most crossfeed you could get, followed by no crossfeed. Press it again for bass 20 Hertz. So you can go volume down to turn the bass at 20 Hertz down, or you can go volume up to turn the bass at 20 Hertz up. And you've got lots of leeway here actually. So I'm going to 0 it. There we go. Press the menu button again And now you've got bass at 125 hertz shelf. So it's the same thing. You can go positive or negative. There we go, back to 0. And then you'll see yellow. Press it again, you'll see green here, and then that's treble at 3 kilohertz shelf. So you can go up and down with that. Press it one more time, and you see blue, and that's treble at 20 kilohertz, that you can go positive or negative. And then one last time, you've got your lock control. So when you see this magenta, as Chord calls it, light up, you're able to engage lock mode by pressing the volume up and down buttons simultaneously. There it is. So now this could be in my pocket, and it could be rubbing up against keys and whatnot, and if I'm listening, I won't get blasted to music and nothing will change, and it's a really nice feature. In order to disengage lockdown mode, you press the menu button again, and simultaneously volume up and down. Boom, you're out of lockdown mode. And that's it. All right, quick note on the buttons. They are made of some sort of translucent plastic, so you could see the light going through them. And they do you hear that? I'm like really shaking it. They do rattle a bit. And I guess that could drive some people nuts. The buttons on my signature, or something on my iDSD signature, rattles as well. That stuff doesn't really bug me, because when I'm listening to music, I'm normally still, and I'm not even going to hear it rattle in my pocket because it'll be muffled and far away from my ears anyways that have headphones in them. All right, during this demo, for the most part, the power light has been off, and there's a reason for that. So what this power light tells you is what sample rate you're playing if you connect it to something. So I'm going to move this over a little bit first, like that. And I am going to connect it to my iPhone. So as you can see, that's Porgy and Bess, Summertime. There we go. And it's hooked up to my iPhone now. Let's press play. So as you can see, we've got it lit up red, and that means it's Redbook, which is CD quality, 44.1 kilohertz. Let's change tracks, and you'll see it change as well. So let's go here, Carmelita, Linda Ronstadt. And there you go. It turns blue, which tells me that it's 192 kilohertz. One more time. Let's go to the top, and we'll pick this song by Billie Eilish. And there you go. It's yellow, which means 88.2 kilohertz. Now, why is this awesome? Because I can have this across the room, and I know very easily with a glance that, yes, this is 88.2 kilohertz, or yes, it's CD quality. And that I really do appreciate. My Denafrips Venus 2 has these little lights and little numbers above them, and then they change that way. There is no way I could read that even 3 feet away from the DAC. So this is a really cool feature, and I thought it was worth mentioning. So that's pretty much it for the UI. Overall, I think it's very good. Is it perfect? Probably not. I mean, it does take you a while to familiarize yourself with how it works, and it's not something you can pick up and just use without looking at their PDF, their manual, or whatever. But once you do take the time to familiarize yourself, it becomes really easy, and you appreciate it, and works really, really fluidly. Overall, this is a great user interface. All right. Let's just get this out of the way. I'm smitten with the Mojo 2 as far as being a portable amp DAC. I've had this thing since April, and it basically goes out with me everywhere I go, be it doctor's office, work, shopping, trips, whatever. So why is this? Well, 5 reasons. This thing's always charged. Now, how many times have you guys wanted to bring your DAP or portable amp DAC or whatever with you, last minute decision, but you realized it's got little or no battery life in it, so you don't end up bringing it. So yeah, there's no babysitting with the Mojo's battery. Since I've been docking it with my headphone amp, it's always plugged in there. So when I'm ready to go, so is the Mojo. And I guess you could thank Intelligent Desktop Charging for that, because I don't have to worry about the battery. It's small, pretty simple, but this can't be overlooked. I'll set my playlist and I'll put it in one pocket with my iPhone attached, and they fit no problem. Not at all cumbersome like a larger unit would be, or a separate DAP in an additional pocket, because I won't go anywhere without my iPhone. So yeah, because of this, I'll walk around and actually listen to music, because this, my friends, is what it's all about. The Mojo 2's got advanced features that are easy to use, so they actually get used. I'm mainly talking about crossfeed and EQ here. Now, I had the ability to adjust both of these things on my RME ADI2 DAC, but almost never bothered to because that thing was so convoluted and cumbersome for me to use. So I left it flat. It was still an awesome DAC though, and I regret selling it. But anyways, getting back to the Mojo, it may have less fine-tuning available than the RME, but in my humble opinion, much better and easier implementation. To further my point, here are some examples. For crossfeed, this song, Judy Blue Eyes. It starts off in the left channel only and sounds weird on headphones. Maxing out crossfeed here makes it play softly in the right ear as well, and closer to how this would sound playing it from a set of loudspeakers. This isn't something I'll leave on as it tends to narrow soundstage, but the difference is a song like this becomes more enjoyable on headphones, and I won't end up skipping it right off the bat where I would have before. This is something that I really appreciate and use all the time. Not only is it useful, but it gives you something to fidget with while you're listening to your music. You can make discernible, better sounding differences depending on your headphones and the recording that you're listening to. I just got these Dan Clark Aeon 2 Noirs. Great set of cans, but I'm finding more often than not the treble is just a little bit too much for my ears. Now, these headphones actually come with tuning pads for this exact reason, and they do work, but I feel like they also take away a little bit of resolution as well. Not so much with the Mojo 2. Rob Watts designed what he calls a completely lossless EQ. So I bring up lower bass a bit, and then mid bass up by a couple clicks, and then the lower treble I'll go down by a couple clicks. Upper treble I'll just leave alone, and voila. Noir sounds so much better to my ears without the use of any type of pad. So, as I said before, it's really cool that I could just have EQ settings that can be adjusted to taste while listening and hear the difference in real time. This is something I fidget with a lot. The final reason I think Mojo 2 makes an incredible portable amp DAC is it sounds good. Well, duh. This little box is magical, and it's got balls. It drives every single headphone I've thrown at it with plenty of headroom should I decide I'd like to make my ears bleed. Now, is it going to power Hi-Fi Man Sesfara or Dan Clark Stealth? Probably not. Not very well anyways. But are you really going to want to take those headphones out with you portably? Probably not. You're going to have a nice, powerful desktop amp that you have at home that you could still use the Mojo as a DAC for regardless. So you're good there. It's got as much detail as I need, and I can cater the sound however I choose quickly and easily. So as I said before, I take this everywhere. I took the Mojo and Aeon 2 Noirs to the dentist the other day and used them for an hour while I waited for my kids to get checked up and tortured. I had a great time just listening. This scenario is ideal for the Mojo and definitely the most fun I've ever had at the dentist. So towards the end, he calls me in to speak to me about their cavities. The guy asked me if I was a pilot. Ha ha ha, I get it, big headphones. I had nothing snappy to say in return. I was still in a trance that Radiohead put me in. This is now my go-to combo for these types of situations going forward. So let's compare it to my other portable amp DAC, the reigning champ, in my house anyways, Hi-Fi iDSD Signature. All right, I'm going to try something a little bit different format-wise. I'm going to be comparing Mojo 2 versus Hi-Fi iDSD Signature, and I'm going to be using Apple Music downloaded files. I'm going to make sure that both of these are volume matched, and basically what I'm going to be doing is just switching the headphone cable back and forth and let you know what I think of the difference ad hoc. So the first song I'm going to start off with is by Aha. It's Take On Me, their acoustic version from 2017. So let's just see how we do.
Battle Royale!
Okay, so with my Meze Empyreans here, I prefer the sound coming out of the Mojo 2 more. The acoustic guitar, it just seemed so much clearer, and it was just more of a holographic representation of the song, which was really cool. The Hifi iDSD signature was a good listen, don't get me wrong. It just, in comparison with the Mojo 2, it seemed veiled. So I found that really interesting. Mojo 2 gets this round. This time I listened to Playing God by Polyphia. I noticed the same sort of things this time as I did last, but this was really interesting. So the instrument separation was way better on the Mojo, and it was still holographic. It was more holographic than the signature, but the nylon strings of this guitarist were just too intense on the Mojo, whereas everything being more veiled on the signature lended itself to a better experience. So this was really cool. So I guess this round the signature takes it. But now what I want to do, because I can, is set the Mojo, the EQ in the Mojo, just to tame the treble a little bit and use a bass boost. And also with the signature, I'm going to use X bass because I always have it on, but I wanted it to be fair with the EQ in both of these. So that's how I'm going to try it now. And I'm going to see how that sounds and whether or not that makes a difference. So let's check it out. Okay, so I just did that test, and now I actually prefer the Mojo 2 with the adjustments that I made. It's got more, it's just, I'm still getting more information, I feel like, than I am with the signature, and now the treble's tamed to a point where those nylon guitar strings aren't like, you know, infecting my ears with just too much. So that was actually really interesting. This EQ is a lot more adjustable than just the X bass on the signature. And it's also got this 3D switch, but I find that it's not for me, so I always leave it off. But I prefer overall the Mojo 2 wins this one as far as being able to use equalizer. All right, so I switched to my Focal Stelias, and I just finished listening to Love You So Bad by Ezra Furman. Not the best recording, but great song anyways. So you're going to hear the same thing over and over again, it seems, because I'm noticing a pattern. Right at the crescendo of the song, around 2 minutes and 52 seconds, there's a lot of instruments going on, and everything is so much more defined. The DAC to the Mojo 2 just handles everything like a champ, and better than the Hifi iDSD signature. So that was really cool. Obviously the Mojo 2 wins this round, and on to the next. All right, I guess I'm done here. I just listened to Metallica, Master Puppets, and all the same stuff. I like it on both devices. I like it better on the Mojo 2, and that's it. If I didn't have the Mojo 2, I'd still be enjoying the signature and not know any better. It's just when you get in the weeds and I'm comparing the two, this is my preference. So I guess I'm going to keep it. This is going to be my master. I will obey my master. Master! That's a fun song. I like that song. It's pretty sweet. Anyways, Mojo 2 wins. So now what I'm going to do is compare this just using its DAC against some of my other DACs with my loudspeaker setup. So that should be fun. Now my last video had me hooking up the Mojo 2 with my Hagel H190 and Klipsch Cornwall 4s. To this day, that remains as the best loudspeaker experience that I've ever had. So on that note, let's compare it with all the other DACs that I have access to. All right, now I have the Mojo 2 hooked up to my DDC and my loudspeaker setup so I could do comparisons with other DACs. Before I do that, I just wanted to make a quick note about that light that you see. I'm going to zoom in. There we go. I'm going to make it a little darker so you could see what I'm seeing. That fuchsia, pinky purple light on the left, not only does it look freaking amazing, it means that the Mojo is completely charged and in what Chord calls intelligent desktop mode. What this does is allow the Mojo to be plugged into power almost indefinitely with no overcharging. So what is overcharging, you ask? It's what inevitably ruins battery-powered portable devices. For example, if I had my iDSD signature plugged in all the time, or even the first iteration of Chord Mojo, it would eventually pooch their battery because you can't plug stuff like that in all the time. It just keeps charging the battery and it degrades it over not a super long amount of time. A really, really great feature because now I could leave this on my desktop and not have to worry about that. Also, the fuchsia, it's one of my favorite colors. I've actually sent a private message to Sebastian over at Hi-Fi Audio to see if I could get the signature to just light up like that all the time, and it wasn't in the cards for me. So I decided to see first how it fares against the current champ, Venus 2. I start with the song Dreams, and what I began to think was a very spicy finding. Overall, I like my system with the Venus better, but something was off here. Hi-hats were coming through on the right speaker when being driven by the Mojo, whereas on my Venus, they were tapping away on the left, and that's just not okay. So I did a bunch more listening, and things sounded very different. I ended up playing a test track. You know the type that tells you which speaker the sound should be coming from? Left speaker, right speaker. My Denafrips XLR cables were totally inverted and have been for a while. Left speaker, right speaker. So now I did some real testing and found the Venus 2 overall a better experience. Wider soundstage, more organic, holographic, punchy sound. I know some of you are going to chime in here and say, well, that's not a fair comparison, and you're right. No, of course it isn't. But I still did it because I could. I mean, it's good to have an idea of where the Mojo's place is within the pack. The surprise for me, though, was how much I still enjoyed the Mojo in this setting. If I didn't have my $3,000 R2R DAC to compare, this Mojo 2 would actually be top of the heap. Yeah, that's right, I said it. I tested against Gustard X16, Blue Sound Node's internal, Hi-Fi iDSD signature, and the internal DAC from my Hagel H190. I preferred the Mojo in all of those cases. Much less sibilant than the X16 and came across as more natural here. The sound was more three-dimensional versus the DAC on my H190, more dynamic and larger soundstage versus both my Blue Sound Node and Hi-Fi iDSD signature. I didn't just test this on my loudspeaker setup. Mojo was also plugged into my office headphone setup with the GSX Mini. Now, this is its new home as the Class A GSX Mini pairs extremely well with the Mojo. All right, let's get this plugged into my office desktop headphone rig, which as of right now consists of a Wii Mini and a Headamp GSX Mini. So the first thing you're going to need that you see here is a 3.5 to dual RCA cable. This cable's from AudioQuest and it's Big Sur. So what you do is you plug the 3.5 end just as if you were plugging in headphones. And then the other end obviously goes to the back of the amp in the RCA section. There we go. Then from the Wii Mini, we've got a Supra optical cable, and we're going to just plug that right into the Mojo, into the optical port on the right, until it clicks, just like that. Only thing else we need now is power. So the only way to get power into the Mojo 2 is through a cable like this. It's micro USB. And I'm not a huge fan of these because if you try and accidentally force this in the wrong way, you'll end up bending the port in the Mojo 2 potentially, or whichever port you're using, and render this unusable, because this is the only way to charge the Mojo. So the way that I sort of fix that, and today's pro tip is, I'll leave a link in the description here, but get yourself a L-shaped micro USB cable and make sure that the L portion angles you away from the optical cable. That way there's no guessing. And then when you put it in, it's the same. You don't have to squint and make sure you're doing it the right way every time. You just know it goes in that way. And then that's it. We're ready to turn this thing on. I'm not sure if you could see the color properly, but when you're hooking this up to any external amp, you want to make sure that you're on the color indigo and in the second gain level, and that gets you to 2 watts, which is probably best for most amps. Otherwise you can get into some clipping and degradation of sound. So here's blue, so it's 1 up from blue is indigo, and that's where it's best to leave it. Let's test this sucker out. After listening and comparing the Mojo against everything else I had with my GSX Mini, I came to the same conclusion. This little portable champ mirrored the experience that I got using it as a DA converter for loudspeakers. So yeah, apart from my Venus 2, this stands out really well from the rest. I also tested things out with my Xbox One setup. This is where my THX AAA 789 and Sennheiser HD800S live. Here, I love that equalizer because Xbox tends to sound a bit sharp. And best audible experience playing Apex here too. I have a huge smile on my face while orphaning so many digital children. Just all of the garbage and trash. You're welcome for the teabag, buddy. You sound fabulous. So yeah, this was a complete surprise to me. The Mojo 2 is a fantastic DAC for both loudspeaker and headphone setups alike.
All right, real talk. If you look at Chord Electronics as a company and check out all their stuff that they sell, you could buy a car with the amount of money that it takes to get some of their stuff, like the Dave, for instance, and the M scaler that they want you to get with the Dave. And this is all incredibly, it must sound amazing. I'm not doubting that after hearing the Mojo. But when you look at where the Mojo is as far as a value proposition, it's actually quite a good value and probably a gateway drug, intended to be a gateway drug for Chord. So $785 USD, I think it is right now. Take that money and buy another DAC from another company, like a chip DAC, and compare them. I mean, I compared mine, and the Mojo came out on top with everything that I had under about $1,000. So I found that really interesting. But on top of that, value proposition wise, you've got a DAC that you can unplug from your speaker system or headphone rig and take with you, and it can drive your headphones like beautifully. So as far as a value proposition, I think it's a steal. I think it's their best deal. And yeah, that's how I feel. So if you're in the market for a great desktop DAC amp that you could just unplug and take with you anywhere, this is a stellar option and my current favorite. Now, is this the holy grail of portable DAC amps? Like the best thing ever? The be all and end all at this point in time? Yeah, pretty much. The Chord Mojo 2 gets a strong recommendation from this channel. John Franks and Rob Watts should be really proud of what they've accomplished here. And with that, I'll say thank you for watching. Likes, subs, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye. I've been using mine for a number of months. Oh shit! I dropped my water. Good thing I put a cap on that. Everything's okay. Everything's okay.
The end.